On a bachelor party, I had a fun night with his best friend that cost me my marriage. Then he did this. My fiance decided to ruin my life because I had a fun night with his best friend. My marriage is on the deck of ruins, and I'm still trying to understand what I had done wrong to warrant him to ruin the marriage. This was an alliance that my parents had ingrained into my head since I was a kid, and I had fantasized about my fiance being my knight in shining armor when we had met at a family dinner. And now he didn't want me anymore, all because of a little fun I had had that had slipped my mind. I mean, I was drunk, for fuck's sake. Was I supposed to be held accountable that my fiance's best friend looked like him? I couldn't believe that he had done that to me. Just ruined everything we had worked for. Sorry, I had worked for it. I'm not being presumptuous, but that was how it was. I had put in the work to make our relationship work. I did whatever he wanted. I was always out for him. His family knew me and loved me, and we had already began planning our wedding. Our marriage was supposed to create an alliance between both of our companies, but notwithstanding that fact, I had been in love with him. And what had he done? Thrown me away because I had drunk danced with his best friend, even after all the things I had forgiven him for. This was not supposed to be a major matter. It had just been a dance, and he was turning a molehill into a ginormous mountain. My fiance's best friend was throwing his bachelor party, and my fiance and I were to go together. I didn't know my fiance's best friend's girl, so I was going to go with my fiance. Yes, my fiance and his best friend were getting married within 2 weeks of each other. They called themselves besties and achieved highlights together. Weird fact, their birthdays were also just 2 weeks shy of each other. So they did things in sequence like that, but they always did them together. Weird stuff like that. So my fiance and I were to go to his best friend's bachelor party. I had worn a sexy dress and was confident in the fact that my fiance was well assured of his place in my relationship. I didn't know he was going to develop a problem in the car when we were already halfway there. Tom about my dress was too revealing, and if I respected our relationship, I wouldn't have worn something as eye-catching as that outside. Out of the blue. It was so unwarranted because he had seen me leaving the house with the dress and just decided to make a problem a few minutes from the venue. I didn't answer, though, because what exactly had he expected me to do? Go home and change? I couldn't do that. We got to the party that had been held at a club that had been fully booked by my fiance's best friend, and the party had already been in full swing. As the good wife-to-be that I was, I had stayed by my fiance's side all through the party, drinking the drinks he handed over to me and eating whatever he gave me. But then towards the ending of the party, I had asked him to dance, and he had refused, saying that he had business calls to take and decisions that needed his urgent attention, and told me to stay put. I was angry and wanted to make sure he regretted what he had said, so I had gone to dance on my own. It was just a harmless dance, and while he was busy making his calls, his friend had entered the dance floor. And I had a little dance with him. It was like a playful dance and wasn't even sexual. Neither did it have a double meaning, but my fiancé had taken it the wrong way. This was when my fiancé had decided to walk back into the club and found the two of us dancing together, and he stormed out unprovoked. His other friends had even been laughing and cheering the dance on. That was to tell you there was nothing wrong with what had taken place. I know you all would say a woman never acknowledges when she went wrong or a woman is not accountable. I've read all of you's comments on various babes sharing their experiences with their husbands, and I want to say it's utter bullshit. Why weren't you calling out the men? Weren't they also at fault too? Anyway, my fiance's best friend drove me home, and I got home and my fiance was not at home. He didn't come home, and it was his lawyer that came to the house and told me that my fiance was putting the house up for sale and I needed to be out before the end of the day. The fucker threw me out of the house over a little dance and didn't even have the audacity to come tell me himself. Over a little dance. And it wasn't as if we weren't familiar with said best friend. I had hung out with him, hung out with them together more times than I could count since I got engaged to my fiancé. I really don't know what had happened and why my fiancé had decided to kick me out of the house without first talking to me. Well, because as it was his house, I had to leave. I wasn't a gold digger and I didn't care about a man's money because I was rich on my own. I packed my things and left his house, and the fool still didn't have the audacity to call me. I got to my dad's house, but they weren't at home, so I had enough time to clear my head and plan revenge against my fiancé. Yes, I wanted my revenge against him because he had already gone around telling my friends and family that the engagement had been called off when there was no call from him to me and no talking out. I wanted to sue, but my father had warned me against suing because it was bad for business, and they, that is our two families, had been in the middle of a business deal. So I couldn't sue him. I loved my fiancé and had literally been looking forward to our marriage all my life, but my fiancé had embarrassed me and I was going to do something in retaliation. So I made a big mistake that gave him an upper hand and posted a pic of a medicine bottle that I thought was Viagra to our friends group chat and said that I was glad to at least be done with someone that needed medical enhancement to get it up. I woke up the next day and found police on my doorstep with my fiancé, and he did the one thing that had never happened to me in my whole life. I was put in a police car and taken to the station. Never in a million years did I think that my mistake was going to cost me my life and health and my family. I ruined my family all because I was trying to prove a point. And I'm not changing my tongue about what I said about you all, always saying that the women ops are never accountable. I would still hold true that it was my husband's fault. For everything. We were supposed to get married and live happily together, but my fiancé was charging me with an indictment for assault through drug abuse. For something that helped him. He was mentally deranged and crazy for doing that to me. This was someone I wanted to spend my whole life with, and he was trying to ruin my life like this. Because this was total ruination. My family didn't need the press of the court case as they were trying to seal a deal. Right now, the court has fixed our hearing, and that's what I'm waiting for. I don't even know why I'm ranting on this platform, as you all would just support my fiancé anyway when I basically didn't do shit. Drug abuse? The only time I had been near drugs was when he was sick, and I feel I need to fill you guys in on my backstory to see how unfair my fiancé was being to me over a little dance. Heck, if I had known, I would have stayed home. My name is unimportant in this thread. I'm around 25 years old, almost 26, and I've been betrothed, or I had been in love with my fiancé ever since I was a preteen. We had been neighbors in the rich neighborhood of a classy place like Beverly Hills. Note, it's not Beverly Hills, I'm only using the location so you would understand how upper echelon my neighborhood was when I was growing up. My father ran a company, I also can't reveal this detail, and my fiancé's father also ran a company, and they were hoping to merge their two companies with our marriage. Yes, arranged marriages still exist. I didn't fight the fact that I was already promised to someone, I kind of liked it. In fact, every single moment growing up as a preteen and a teenager before finally moving on to college, I made sure I was always around him. They labeled me the clingy downer, and my fiancé obviously had complained about it back then. We even laughed about it when we got engaged and reminisced moments of my stupidity. If only I could have seen this coming. I went to college and we lost contact for a while, but then he came for my graduation, and I had thought to myself that this was a man that was intentional and real about me. He took me out on my graduation night, and we had gone dancing and dining, and I think I had fallen in love with him more then. I hadn't seen the red flags of his delusion. We started talking more often, with him calling to check up on me and doing sweet things that made you feel comfortable, safe, and protected. He was showing up for me and showing out. However, I was also doing so myself. We had both been showing interest in each other. I would randomly call him to just come out and dine. I spent my money trying to woo him. There was a time when he was facing a business challenge. Yeah, he has been working for his father's company as normal, and no one had expected him to give it all up and throw it away. Anyway, he had been working for his father's company, and I could remember there was a particular time when he needed money to fund a project that he knew would blow his dad's mind, but he couldn't ask his dad for the money because it was to be a surprise to him at work. My fiancé didn't have the money and had talked to me about it. And do you know what I did? I funded the project for him. I wanted to do something for him that would be like a grand gesture. I had really been smitten over the good for nothing. That wasn't the only instance of me spending my money on him. This is to prove to you that I hadn't been a gold digger who had been after my fiancé's money. He didn't even have any, or at least not much, as he was still waiting for him to clock the age his inheritance would be given to him. I sponsored some of our dates and would have literally done anything to keep him talking with me. I didn't have any siblings, so talking to him became like the favorite part of my day back then. After about a year of talking to each other and going out on casual hangouts and get-togethers, or him coming to pick me up for family brunch, you'd be thinking he proposed after all those times. No. My fiancé enlisted into the army and decided to be a combat officer. So impromptu, and when I had confronted him about it, he had said that it was what he wanted to do with his life, and he couldn't see his life taking another path. You'd think I would have been turned off by that. A man who didn't put family first or even care about me enough to want to stay back. Nope. But did I learn what he was all about and leave him before it got too late? A bigger nope. A year after going off to fight wars and patrol the state of America, he came back and asked me to marry him. I had no idea what had warranted the sudden marriage, but I can vividly remember when he got down on one knee and I was ecstatic. After getting engaged, I moved into his house thinking we would start planning our wedding when my fiancé enlisted for the army again without my knowledge and got deployed. He hadn't talked to me about the possibility of re-enlisting. I recall going to have dinner and he had just casually popped it up as if it was regular evening conversation. I thought he was ready to start a family and I was ready to, but the nigga goes and then enlists. As at then, I had friends planning their weddings too, and I would be all alone in my big house with a ring on my finger that had started looking a lot like a promise ring. I guess I was fed up and I wanted to do something to make him never leave me again. Was I crazy for what I did? Why had I done it in the first place? Do you guys want to know what I did? Karma came together in the end to make me answer for my own wrongdoings, but what if my fiancé's wrongdoings? Who was going to make him pay for leaving me alone in his house like a cuckolded wife while waiting for him to come and do what he had put the ring on my finger for? I had become a laughingstock to my friends, and it wasn't as if they laughed to my face, but I could feel their piercing gazes every time I came out to brunch or a dinner party with them. And I wasn't yet married, and my fiancé was nowhere to be seen. All of these would have been solved if he had just wifed me immediately he put a ring on my finger. So I won't be blamed for my actions. My fiancé should be blamed. He caused all these. He didn't put me in his plan. I wasn't crazy for wanting stability in my life. I'm still not crazy now because he's about to throw me in jail when I didn't do anything wrong but what I felt was right and necessary. He was going to leave again. I had seen it in his eyes. Immediately, he took me to the altar. The very next day, he was probably going to be on the next flight to where they were based. I looked out for my future, and I don't care what you all think about me. Call me delusional, call me crazy, call me whatever you want, but I had to do what was right to me. A year down the line in the Army, my fiancé suffered a major injury that damaged his legs, and after spending about 3 months in the hospital, he had to go on physical therapy. Do you know, at that time, I was the one taking care of him because I had loved him. This was what I sacrificed for him. His legs had been almost gone, but luckily the doctors had been able to put their fake metal things in the leg, and he had to use physical therapy to learn how to walk. We stayed in the hospital for over 3 months, and when we had been discharged home, a physical therapist came by every day to teach my fiancé how to walk again, and that had been going great. This was the only thing I did wrong. The pain had been too much to bear right from the onset of his accident, and he developed arthritis on his legs, and I was prescribed by the doctor to give him prednisone. I gave him whenever he complained about pain in his legs, and it had always seemed to help him. Well, prednisone and diclofenac. So I began putting it in his food and making sure he was never in pain. I wanted to do something for him. My heart ached any time I saw him in pain, and in order to keep him out of it, it was better to give him the drugs before he complained, so through the long trying days of physical therapy, I gave him prednisone. His best friend had come to live with us during this period, and while I can say I was tempted, nothing ever happened between us. He had been a pillar of emotional support and a patient guy that had tried to bring his friend's, my fiancé, mind out of the bad place that the accident had surely put him in. My fiancé's best friend was like our second family, and during the days of my fiancé's accident, he stood strong with him through thick and thin. He had always encouraged me, and when everything looked like it wasn't going well, he was there for all of us. There had been times when my fiancé would get frustrated with his physical therapy, and he would fling everything away and shout at me and make me feel small and worthless. Times when my fiancé hated the world that had put him in the situation of learning how to walk again. Those times had been really tough times, and I had no one to talk to apart from my future husband's best friend. I know it sounds cliché, but none of you should judge me over turning to my fiancé's best friend to cry on his shoulder. You know how life-changing accidents are and how they can change one's perspective of life. If you've been in a serious accident or you've taken care of someone that had been in a serious accident, you would understand what I meant. No one knew what was going on in the home apart from me and my fiancé's best friend. No one knew how much my fiancé wanted to give up on life apart from me and my fiancé's best friend. My fiancé's mom would come to the house in the daytime, and I would put on a happy, strong face to make sure she didn't see how much her son had been breaking inside from the accident. I didn't have anyone to talk to as no one knew the situation of what was going on at home. I sacrificed my mental health for the fool because I wanted everything to make sure he was okay. And what was the motherfucking thanks I got? A charge for assault and embarrassment in front of all my friends that knew we had been engaged for over 3 years and no marriage. Yes, I slept with my fiancé's best friend, but it had just been a one-time thing, and we had both agreed it was a very big mistake after the whole ordeal. I'm not sorry for that one slip in my judgment. I had been lonely and thinking too much, and I had just needed someone to hold me and comfort me and tell me everything was going to be all right. It had been one of those times that my fiancé was angry with the world, so I couldn't go to him for comfort. And it was better someone I knew than a random stranger on Tinder. Like I said, I'm not sorry. I might have been sorry then, but now that I think about it, I was definitely not sorry now. And it had been a one-time lapse. We had just slept together once because we had both been frustrated and tired. It had only happened once, so before you come for me in the comments, do you think you wouldn't have had a lapse of temporary judgment if you had been in my shoes? Answer that question before you come for me. When you ask yourself what you are willing to do for love, What do you think your answer would be, Redditors? 7 months of physical therapy and my fiancé had been able to walk again, and I knew it in his eyes that he was getting ready to enlist again. Like the man didn't just know when to stop. It was like being in the army gave him some type of superpower. I just couldn't wrap my head around it, and I most definitely wasn't going to let him put himself through that shit again or put me through the stress of worrying if he was okay, or the stress of taking care of him if he met with another unfortunate accident. So I read somewhere that if he stayed sick, he wasn't going to be able to enlist back into the army. I did what I thought was right. He told me he was going to enlist in the army again, but it was to be after our wedding. This man wanted to make me a young widow, but this was not going to be under my own watch. I continued giving him prednisone even after the pains had stopped. I read somewhere that the side effects of corticosteroids was raised blood sugar, and prednisone was a corticosteroid. And if my fiancé had diabetes, he wasn't going to be able to enlist in the army. They wouldn't take him. I did what I thought was the right thing, and I'm slowly seeing the light of my action. Maybe it hadn't been the right thing. Maybe I would have taken him to therapy and talked it out as a couple and told him about my fears of him enlisting again. That was what I should have done. But it was too late now, and I hadn't thought in that direction because I knew my fiancé all too well. Once he made up his mind about something, it would take a huge rock blocking his path to stop him, and he would even try to find ways around said rock. I was desperate and didn't want to end up as a widow just how many days into marriage and become the laughingstock of my friends. I couldn't deal with that embarrassment. I don't know if you all had noticed, but one thing I hated more than anything in the world was embarrassment. I hated the feeling of embarrassment. I would rather be buried alive 6 feet under the ground than be caught in an embarrassment. I wasn't going to sit back and let him make me a widow, so I gave him small doses of the drug. Just little doses that I didn't think would be harmful, and it had never affected him. Or if it affected him, he didn't tell me or he didn't show it. I had read it would increase blood sugar. I didn't know that it would be dangerous or something that would warrant an indictment charge. Yes, that was what it was. I had given my husband diabetes. The little doses of prednisone I had been feeding him for over 6 months had built up his blood sugar, and he had gone to do a test, and it was confirmed that he had diabetes or something was causing his blood sugar to go up. He got the news just days before his best friend's bachelor's party, but he didn't know that I was the one that had caused it, so I had no idea why he had decided to call off the engagement. It was very strange. Until now I can't comprehend it with this court issue on hand. He hadn't known I was responsible for his diabetes problem until I had posted the medicine. I thought it was Viagra I had posted and didn't know it was the prednisone I used to give him, and I dug my own grave with that. Everything is falling out of place, and my fiancé's family's company was withdrawing from the project that my family was involved in because of our problems. My father is blaming me for everything and is threatening me. I'm going to kill him. After everything I had done, and this was what I had gotten as thanks. I just wanted him to not leave me. I'm not crazy. Hopefully after this court case, I would come and update you all on what made my fiancé decide to ruin my life. So you would see how terrible how men are. Update. Hi Redditors, this is 3 months later, and I just stumbled upon this post that had been made by my ex-fiancé, and it wasn't hard to figure out her password. It was something that she wouldn't be able to forget. And I read the post and I couldn't just help but laugh. Women are terrible, but my ex-fiancé was the worst of them all. This witch had tried to turn it all on me when she had been the one at fault. She slept with my best friend. Heck, I don't think I can call the dude my best friend anymore anyway. She slept with him more than once. I know I had been in an ill place during my accident, but she drugged me and proceeded to sleep with my best friend right in front of me, thinking I was drowsy. They slept together every opportunity they got during my accident, thinking the drugs they gave me would make me feel drowsy and not recognize what was going on. I knew what was going on big time, but I somehow had this doubt in my mind. I had confronted my best friend about it, and he said he was indeed sexing my to-be wife, and she had been the one that had come on to him. He had said it without remorse, and the witch thought she could be discreet about it. She thought she could eat her cake and get away with it. Well, the author of this post is now in jail serving a 5-year term and undergoing psychiatric treatment because, according to my sources, she ran mad during her first 2 weeks in her cell, a befitting end for such evil.